Well, good evening, everyone. I think most of you know who I am. I'm Marcella Gens, and I'm the director of the Charlestown Library. And I'm thrilled tonight to have Ginny Fite and KP Robbins and Catharine Baldau and Tara Bell here to talk about their new collaboration. So we'll get started. Do you want to introduce yourselves first, or how would you like to proceed?
Karen, have an idea?
Well, we can just say who we are. I'm Karen Robbins. I write under KP Robbins. And I'd like to start by thanking Marcella, because this writing group has been through several iterations. And at one point, we did meet at the Charlestown Library every week. Ginny and Tara and I were in that group at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you.
Yes, I remember it well.
I think we've had great support from the library for years. Really appreciate it.
Yes. Well, we try to do what we can for our local authors. So
that's great.
And Tara, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Tara Bell. I've lived in this area for a while, and that's what I'll say.
Ginny?
I'm Ginny Fite. I'm busily writing novels. Sometimes I don't know why, but this was a complete departure from what I usually do, because I had access to 3 other brilliant brains. So it made it quadruple fun. And I'm delighted that we finished and that we found a publisher and that we're on the way to seeing if everybody else loves this book.
And Kathy?
Oh, mute.
On mute.
I don't know why.
Unmuted.
Not
Oh,
now.
you're good.
You're okay now.
Okay. Didn't show me as muted. Sorry about that. I'm Kathy Baldau, and I've been in this area for 20 years, so I'm a newcomer. And I just want to say that I wrote my part of this novel between the hours of 5 a.m. and 8 a.m. So I have a disease, and that was the only time of day that I was able to do it, but it was definitely worth it.
Well, I'm so glad to hear that. So shall we start off with some questions, and all of you can just pop in and say what you need to say. So why don't we start out by talking about what is the story about? Kathy?
Believe it or not, that's the hardest question you can ask an author. It's very hard to put it all into one little paragraph, but basically the story is about a girl who's an unwitting accomplice to a school shooting, her terrible grief and guilt, and how she has to face the survivors and the parents and the other adults in the community and her fellow classmates over what she's done, and how they all come to terms with what happened at their school.
That seems like a pretty well-developed synopsis. Ginny?
We worked on that for a while. Like every other sentence in the whole book, there are 8 characters who have first-person voices in this book. So it's not just this amazing character, Lily, that Kathy created, but also Charmaine, who loses her husband, and the police officer who entered the building, was the first one to enter the building while the shooter was still killing people, and the 2 friends who are inseparable, and so on. There's just a cast of characters who experience this event in their own way and with their own grief and anger. And I think that that's what makes it so powerful.
With multiple authors, I think the only way we could have written a story is by having alternating points of view. So you can read the first chapter on our website, the novel thoughtsandprayers.com, And you will see, first it starts with Lily's point of view, and then it goes to Keisha's. And so you get the viewpoints of all these characters throughout the story.
So how did you all decide on this topic? What provoked it?
Karen always says that I'm the one who said, let's write a novel together. She
I
swears
remember.
by that. You think so too? All right,
Yeah,
maybe
I
I did. And it's possible that I said, let's write about a school shooting, although God knows why I would pick that subject. But just as we were beginning to formulate what the plot would be for this, how it would be different from anything else we saw out there, and there are a lot of books on this subject. The Parkland shooting happened, and we were so struck by the kids and their reaction and their courage and their strength. I mean, I was so awed by those teenagers. And I think that we all were. I think that just drove us further into the feelings created by this kind of event and took our book forward.
Did you include any conspiracy theories in your book, since that did surround Parkland? That it wasn't real, that it was a made up event? And
there's a reference, I think that Mike Moran.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one of the characters refers to actually the Sandy Hook shooting. And at one point, people had said that didn't really happen. But now he's faced with the actual shooting that happens right in his community. So he has a change of heart about that. But other than that, no, there's no conspiracy in the book.
and where is this located? Is there a location, or is it so it could be anywhere?
Exactly. We did not name a city or state on purpose because these shootings can and do happen anywhere.
The
Exactly.
high school is Rockwell High School. So like all of the Rockwell paintings of America, this could happen anywhere in this country. It could happen in any town or suburb, and it could happen to any child or their parents or their teachers.
Yeah, exactly, which is what makes it so frightening. So you've talked a little bit about collaboration, but why did you want to collaborate?
Gosh, nobody asked us that question before.
Can I answer that? Or at
Yes.
least try? I think at first we didn't. At first, because we'd been together so long, we were used to each other's style. We were used to hearing each other's work. And I think Jenny saying it was like, hadn't crossed our mind. She said, do you want to write a book together? And I think you're right, Jenny. I think you might not have said school shooting just that. I think you had other ideas, and we just went with the one. So that's pretty much what I was going to say.
I'll add to that.
Yeah.
Writing a novel is hard. It's hard and it's lonely, and I think it kind of was a lark. Well, it'd be easier to write a quarter of a novel than it would be to write a whole novel. Why not give it a try? The writing of it was the easy part. The editing, not as easy, but it ended up working out. So
Yeah,
So-
now we're thinking of writing another one.
Wow.
Yeah, Jenny keeps asking. We're not ready yet.
Well, maybe in a few more months you'll think about it.
Maybe in a few more months.
So-
Kathy made the comment that it's similar to having a baby. Right after you have the baby, you think, I'm never going through that again. A little while later, you forget all about the pain and the mess. And all you have is this adorable little baby, and you start thinking, oh, I could do it again.
Yes, you have an adorable little book.
It's an important book. Yes.
So what was your process in writing the book?
I think Karen, last night, you said it so well.
What did I say? Well, we've been in a group, because we've been in a group, you know, for many years. We had this kind of process down where we met every week. I'm in Virginia, but I would meet with them on FaceTime. And we would read aloud what we were all working on our individual projects. So we kind of had this rhythm going, this routine going, that we would meet every week. And I think we first really began with the characters. We really began developing the characters, and we wrote up descriptions of our characters, because even though we kind of each took two characters, my characters were going to interact with Ginny's characters or Tara's characters or Kathy's characters. So we had to really understand, you know, what the others were writing about. So that was the start of the process anyhow.
And then how did you develop the plot?
So the plot, and Deb is asking this question also, the plot, we were pretty sure we knew how to do that. I mean, we've written a few books before this. So we embarked on a kind of semi-save the cat mode, figuring out which would be the inciting incident, what would be the thing that gets the character to make a decision to go forward, where the crisis was, what the climax was, what the payoff or resolution might be. So we had those 10 poles, as Kathy kept saying, and we aimed toward them as we wrote. Each week, each of us wrote a scene for our character in that geographic space of the plot. I know that sounds really weird, but that's the best I can describe it.
I like the geographic metaphor there. I think that works very nicely.
But as always in writing, you know, you can have all your plots figured out, but things come up and surprises come up in the process. I'm not a writer who ever works from an outline. So I like discovering things about my characters as I go. I might not have known about their particular traits on day one, but as you go through the process, you learn more about your characters, I think.
So Deb also asked, how are you able to keep the story consistent as you went along, particularly plot consistency? And I would say a fair amount of quiet fighting.
Well, we got the draft done first, and then we had to go through and edit it for all the inconsistencies. Did I say his eyes were blue and you said his eyes were brown? And the timetable. I mean, we went through several rounds of edits to kind of make it a coherent story.
Many rounds. Can I speak, or did Kathy want to say something? Kathy?
Go ahead.
Okay. No, I forget. No. With these, as we moved along with the characters, when we were first starting to write the scenes, I think it went very fluidly and speedily, so that we got all the scenes down. And we did a little bit of nitpicking at first, but not really. We wanted that first draft. That took us a year, didn't it? About a year, the first draft. So we got all the first draft.
That was 86 scenes, by the way.
Yeah, 86 scenes. So every time we'd come in, and what was amazing to me and to all of us is that somehow we fit it together. We slowly fit it together. We made this character come from here. We got the timeline right, but we really threw down the first draft. We got that down. And then we went back and really started nitpicking and switching scenes around, so that we didn't start right away to strongly edit it. We had the fun or the joy, not joy, sadness or grief or whatever we needed to go through, the emotion to go through and take these characters through the story. So I think that was the best part and the amazing part. And then we went back and did more technical, more making the story work, making it go to the tent post, and make sure we had the timeline right. And this character wasn't somewhere else when this one was somewhere else. And that's how we did it. Basically how we did it.
Because you mentioned 87 scenes, I think it was. Do you
86.
think 86, I'm sorry. So do you think that this book would be ripe for a movie? Or
That would be lovely.
TV series, or a Netflix series or something?
Yeah, Netflix series, yeah.
Yeah, I think it would adapt pretty easily to being serialized. But I don't think we wrote it from that perspective.
No, I
I
don't
think
think
we
so.
were
either.
writing, what comes next? It's the writer's constant question when you're doing a novel, what happens next? So I think that's how we organized the scenes. We tried not to have any overlapping moments, although we might have a few that are spliced together. Kathy, you were going to say something before.
The structure of it, I think, and I said this earlier, that writing is hard. And I think that we all wish that we could just sit down and put beautiful words on the page. But the truth is, to construct a novel, it's a lot of struggle and work and structure and what is the goal in this scene and what is the obstacle and how do we get through this and how do we push our characters forward. That's maybe the not so fun part of writing, but is to me that work of it is the most rewarding and when it comes out in the end. And we could not have done this 4 people together, like Karen said, if we had not known each other for years. And if we didn't have that same sickness that I spoke about earlier, because, we were each pulling our own weight in every way, even if it wasn't our scene that we were writing, we were all involved in it. And we had to trust each other. We had to respect each other enough to be able to yell at each other if we needed to, and not take it personally, because we knew in the end that we all had the same goal, that we all wanted to do our best work, basically, especially with this subject matter.
Yes.
It's a little bit like, so you jump in the deep end of the pool and you realize that you have forgotten how to swim, and then somebody jumps in to save you. And you have to make yourself trust that person, that they really will save you. They're not going to push you down under the water. And I think there were moments like that when we were debating with ourselves, is this a save or am I dying here?
I just saw a question pop up on my screen that said, did you each develop 2 characters? Yes. Yes. I don't know if we should talk about the characters.
Well, I would say yes, but in fairness, I really only wrote 1 character and then a couple scenes for another character. We decided that we did not want the shooter to have a big voice in this story.
Mm-hmm.
But the shooter does have a couple of scenes, but that's it.
And he's one of the 8 characters.
Yes.
Yeah, he's named and he has a couple of first-person scenes. And I'll tell you a little backstory about this, because after we got done editing, then we had an editor from the publisher edit us. And we got to this point where she's saying, well, this whole section has to be in italics. And we are sitting over on our side going, no. And Kathy's saying, all that time we spent figuring out what got italics and what didn't, how can they just undo that? So we had not just with each other, these editorial tussles, we had them with our publisher's editor as well. And I think we won't know until we actually see the print book, but we think that we saved ABC's sections and that they are not in italics. but we won't know until you know, because we haven't seen our book yet either.
I should say the killer's name was Aaron Blake Crofton, and the media dubbed him the ABC killer. And that's how he's referred to in the book.
I want to say too that our publisher was very supportive, other than some of the things they brought us through, that like a cover of ABC, but like the cover, but they've been very supportive to us and our project, and kind of thrilled with it, which really surprised us. We were very
Thrilled is a good word.
yes.
After many rejections, yes, we were.
She said, yeah, good things.
Did you have a, what's the word? I just had it now, I've lost it, but did you have somebody shop your
An
book
agent?
around? An agent?
No.
So we were very organized about how we queried this book. And we began with a list of, was it 54 agents, Karen? I can't remember.
Yeah, we ended up, I think we queried 67
Right.
by the time we were done.
Just kept querying. You cannot, if you want to do this job, you can't be a cookie because you'll melt. You have to be really, really determined to get this done. You have to have grit. So if you're thinking about writing a novel and submitting it to anyone, just remember that when you start, this is the time to put on your steel corset.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get a lot of rejections, and a lot of people just don't respond at all. So we wrote to agents, and we also wrote to small publishers. The big publishers won't look at your books unless it's submitted by an agent. So we did both, and we finally got a publisher, and we were so excited. And then COVID hit, and the publisher sat on the book for a full year, did nothing.
Because that was during the COVID. Yeah.
You think it was because of COVID that they set
Yes.
up? Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I think they were unsure, like many publishers were, even the big guys, they were unsure how it would affect the book trade. But as it turns out, COVID was one of the best things to happen to publishing. Their sales are up across the board, large and small publishers alike. And interestingly, the last report I read was that fiction was doing better than ever. So
Yes, that's true. It's going great guns at the moment. So
Lots of COVID, you know.
you finally got the right timing.
yes.
So what surprised you, or what did you discover as you were writing this book? Anything?
Got a loophole, Ginny.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
I actually, I might have intuited this. I can't tell anymore whether I make stuff up or it's real. But we have a scene in the book that was questioned by the publisher. Could this really happen? Are you just so far out of the reality loop here? So we did some research and discovered that there is this gun show loophole, which allows an unlicensed person to sell a gun to an unlicensed buyer of any age for, cash or a check or PayPal or Venmo, and no records are kept. So this isn't just the out of the back of the car sales. These are sales at the big gun conferences, where you
In 33 states.
in 33
It can
states
happen.
in this country, that is allowed,
Oh.
which might contribute to the availability of guns among young people who lose their minds and go shoot up schools. Not saying it does, but it's entirely possible. And as it turned out, I didn't make it up. It's really true. And the publisher was surprised, just like we were, that it was really true.
How much research did you actually do for the book?
Well, I think I'm on some FBI watch list now for all of the things that I was Googling. We did a fair amount of research. I mean, it is fiction, but we wanted it to be real, because we don't want the reader to stop and say, you can't get a gun at a gun show when you're 17 years old. But yeah, so we did that type of research, and part of the hardest part for me, wanting to really find the real horror of what my character does, is that I did do a lot of research on FBI, all public records pages and things about school shootings, and read about and looked at photos, and read profiles about school shooters. And I think it was just as terrifying for me as, you know, it could be for anyone in real life. I don't know.
Kathy has two teenagers. So during this, she was the one, she would ask them, I think Sarah's here, but ask them questions. And one of the scenes for me where I have the two girls that I wrote, my two characters were two of best friends, juniors in high school. And I needed to know what drills were like in school. And so Kathy asked about drills, and I had never really realized this, not having a teenager going to school at these school shooting times, that they have these drills all the time. I guess a lot of people do know that now, but that was something new for me. And what they had to do during the drills, and also that bullets could go through a door, could go through a classroom door, and that kind of thing. I hadn't realized that. So there were a lot more, but that kind of research we had to do. Yes.
It is terrifying if you think about it, what our children and grandchildren and nieces and nephews and their teachers and school staff have to gird themselves for every day. This could happen at any time. I think, Marcella, you found that great fact that during the pandemic, school shootings are down to only 17 for the year, as opposed to the many, many more that occur in normal times. Some psychiatrist or psychologist is going to have to parse that. But the kids grow up now with this in the background for them. It's like, what was it? I can't remember which incident it was where the commentator on the news said, well, all of the young people in the president's staff know how to deal with this because they've had these drills since they were little. You know, why are we doing that? Why are we allowing that to happen?
And I think we dedicated this book to the survivors. And I think millions of Americans, they may not have had someone die in this kind of an incident, horrible incident, or have a relationship at all to that personally. But I think millions of us in America and are feeling this, including ourselves. And we're hoping the readers, so far, the readers have come back with great emotion talking about this, that we did, you know, put that emotion into the pages, into our characters, and therefore in this, into the readers to identify with, that we've all had to, in some way, grieve over this, over what's going on.
Well, it certainly is impossible not to have some level of grief over those shootings. Tara mentioned that she had two sisters or two juniors, right? So and one of you has the shooter and one of you has Lily. So what are the other characters in the book?
Well, I have two adult characters. Charmaine is an emergency room nurse. She's probably about 25 years old. She's married to the school guidance counselor, who is shot in the first chapter, if you read the first chapter. So she is an interesting character because she wasn't in the school herself when the shooting took place, but obviously she's highly affected by it because her husband was shot. My other character is the father of one of the students who was shot in the school. He's a retired Army colonel. He has two older sons. The daughter was their surprise baby, and he's totally taken with her. He always thought, he wanted sons, but she's a big daddy's girl. And then when she is shot, it really turns his head around in a lot of ways. So those are my two characters. Ginny?
So my characters are Keisha Washington, who is the senior class president, a young woman destined for greatness as far as she's concerned. She knows exactly how her life is supposed to go, what is going to happen with her at every step. She has a plan. This shooting completely upturns her life. Everything changes for her. My other character is Joe Hernandez, the police officer who is the first person to enter the school during the shooting. He is incredibly brave at that moment, but his daughter is in there, and he would do anything to save her. And his daughter, of course, is Tara's character, Sophia.
Yeah. So I had the two teens, juniors, known each other since they were little kids, Sophia and Caitlin. And Caitlin's the beauty. She's the daughter of Mike, who's
my character.
and she's the beauty in school. And then Sophia is shy, dark-haired, and they love each other. She's the anchor for Caitlin. And they have a really deep friendship. They're crazy about fashion and sewing and making clothes together. So that's their thing. They've signed up for a contest and for a fashion contest. And that goes throughout the story.
We started putting up little blogs about these characters on the website. So if you want to know more about them, you can go to the novel Thoughts and Prayers. You have to type in the novel thoughtsandprayers.com.
And Kathy, you didn't say Lily and the shooter are your characters. Go ahead. You can go ahead and say, yeah.
I think I said that.
Yeah, the main character, Lily, is Kathy's. And we told her that one day, you know what? Lily's going to be the main character.
I think you all decided that at a meeting, at a writing meeting where I wasn't there.
Right. We waited for her to be gone. And we said, this girl is the protagonist of this story. You have to write more.
And she did. In their wee hours of the morning.
So how much diversity is in your story? Who are your characters? What are their backgrounds? White, black, green?
Well, they're all Americans. Let's start there. But we were trying to think of what does a high school look like in America? And so, you know how characters just come to you out of the blue. You're not really planning for them. So these characters simply arrived. Keisha is a Black American, and Joe is a Cubano, a Cuban American. Karen?
Well, Joe's daughter, obviously, Cuban American, and Charmaine is Black. Mike is Irish, Mike Moran.
I guess
Caitlin is his daughter, so we wanted to have a diversity because we wanted it to represent what high school is like today. So we started with the students and then the adults came later, I
You
guess.
want to talk a little bit about Lily?
Lily's a Korean American. And we did, when we started writing this, like the others have said, we really wanted to create, everyday USA snapshot of a high school in America. And so we wanted our characters to be diverse, but we didn't want their culture, their ethnicity to be driving who they are or driving the story. Like Ginny said, they're all Americans, and no matter what culture they come from, they grieve the same way, they have anger the same way, they suffer the same way from this tragedy, and that's what we really wanted to portray.
yes.
I think that the thing is, if you're a reader and you're identifying with one of these characters, what you're identifying with is not their ethnicity or religion or the color of their skin, but what they feel. What emotion is driving them at that moment. And I think that this is a way, to get at the common humanity of all the hominids on the planet.
Yes.
So who do you think your audience is? Who will read this book?
Everyone, we hope.
Oh, I'm eager to lay my hands on it.
We've had, go ahead, Karen.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
It's been a struggle because there are young characters and there are adult characters. So we went back and forth of how we were going to pitch it. Is it going to be a young adult novel? Is it going to be an adult novel? And our publisher felt one way stronger than we did, but basically, for us, it's anyone from age 15 to 99, because it doesn't just affect the kids in the school. It affects the adults in the community as well, obviously. So I think both young adults and adults can find something in it.
Is the publisher pitching it towards young adult audiences or adult audiences or both, or?
Those categories that you have to pick these days? I've forgotten. Anybody remember the name of the categories? There's this whole long list. The what?
Yeah.
The BISAC codes.
Yeah.
There's a whole long list you have to go through and select what category does your book fit in. So we selected mostly adult codes, and our publisher selected mostly YA codes. And we have been in a tussle with them ever since, but they're the publisher and they're going to win. But I think really, I'm hoping that what will happen is it'll be like Harry Potter. The adults will read it to see if it's okay for their kid to read, and then it'll get passed on.
Yeah.
Well, if it's good fiction, it really doesn't matter whether it's YA or adult, because there are so many crossovers. And so in some ways, I think this is best that it's ambiguous, that it's neither YA nor adult or both. So
It's good to hear.
yeah, most libraries, I don't know if too many, but they used to, buy books and put them in the YA, and the same book they'd put into the adult section. So maybe we'll try that at the Charlestown Library and see what happens.
That would be cool. I remember seeing Cat's Cradle in your YA section years ago, and I thought, wow, I would never have thought about that as a YA novel.
Yeah, we don't do that quite so often now, but at one point, I think we had a lot of the same materials in both adult and young adult. And of course, right now, young adult fiction is really blooming. So that makes it a difference as well, because, 20 years ago, young adult fiction was just taking off. So.
Yeah, because a lot of adults read young adult.
Yes, and I think that's true at the Charlestown Library, that we have more adults reading young adult fiction than we have young adults.
Wow, that's good.
That would be good.
Well, we'll throw it in everywhere. We'll put it in the
Yeah.
children's section, and
Good.
we won't do that, but we'll do what we can to push it. So what can you tell us about the book that we won't find in the jacket copy or in PR materials?
Oh,
Go ahead, Tara.
me?
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say you might not find hope in there, but you do. I think on our jacket covers, we want to say that there's hope there in the story, even though it's such a tragic one. Another one we discovered was that humor in our characters, even during a tragic time. That's not going to be on the cover, but there's humor, our humanness, even in tragedy. If you add that element to the characters and the life, there's something about that that helps people. That's not going to be on the cover. So go.
Yeah, that's good. You got it.
Yay.
So do
Somebody
you,
asked us, what are the, I have this list here. What are the things that we hope that readers can take away? And one of the things we hope readers can take away is that there is hope after a horrific tragedy, that humans wend their way toward hope, which is kind of at the opposite pole from revenge and fury. And I'm holding on to that in the hopes that that is really true.
well, I suspect it is, but we'll see. We'll see. So as writers, what do you think your greatest influences are?
You mean other writers that we've read?
Well, I mean, what influences you as a writer? It might not be other writers. What if it's nature or, but we can also look at what
I think
authors.
other writers do influence you, and I think we all read a lot. You have, if you want to write well, you have to read, but you have to read good writing. Not
Sometimes.
terrible writing, you have to read good writing. So I think that's a big influence for me anyhow.
And any authors that you would say that you think write well and inspire you?
I just finished a book by a Virginia author, S.A. Cosby, called Razor Blade Tears, which was wonderful. I like the Irish writers. I like John Banville, who also writes as Benjamin Black, and Joseph O'Connor. And last year I read a wonderful book by a writer called Niall Williams called This Is Happiness. So I don't read any one genre or any one type of fiction. I try to read a lot and see what I can take from it.
But all good fiction, as opposed
Yes.
to people who perhaps spend more time considering their writing rather than just telling a story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think Toni Morrison gives us a universe to work in. That if we could just carve out a block in the map that Toni Morrison has delineated with her writing, then we would be in a good place. And I think once you've read her, you can't help but take away something that she's taught you.
Well, serious fiction should always at least give food for thought, I would hope.
Yes. Kathy was going to say something.
I was going to say I'm inspired by a local author named Ginny Fite.
Kathy is the really funny one in the group. Anytime when you're reading this book, if you run across a line that makes you laugh out loud, Kathy wrote it. She's just really got the touch.
Well, and I was thinking about Frederick Bachman. I've been reading a lot of him, and he has the ability to make you laugh and cry on the same page. So I call me a sadist. I like to do that to my readers too.
Well, you want to evoke as much emotion as possible, I would think.
Mhm.
I want to
Yes.
just, it may be a little bit out of context, but I'm thinking about our process was kind of, in some ways, kind of magical. There's no way to really say how we did it. We're just used to each other. And I think of when we wrote the conversations with our characters. Like, for example, I would come in with my scene. This is early on, my scene, with a conversation between my girl and her father, which is Jenny's character.
Karen.
Oh, and her father. No, I'm thinking Sophia.
Oh, you're
And
thinking
Joe.
Sophia. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, well, it could be Karen's father too. I mean, any of the scenes where we're going back and forth with a conversation. So I'll have a conversation, and then Jenny might say, well, I'm not sure Joe would do that. Say that. So we'd have to go back and forth how Sophia would answer Joe, and Joe would respond this way, and Sophia would respond this way. So it was kind of like having a conversation with each other, through our characters in a number of scenes, I think, to make it. So that was an interesting part of it.
It is true that it felt to me like I knew an awful lot about these characters. Like I had met them.
Mhm.
And so there was one scene that Tara had written where Joe had on a rumpled uniform, and I thought, no way. He is not going to wear a rumpled uniform. His uniforms are going to be perfect. They're starched. The lines are crisp. So I had to tell her that it couldn't be that.
Musty, I think, had it musty.
It couldn't be musty either.
No. And that changed my mind about it. I got to know everybody's character. We had to know them. Sometimes we'd be off and we'd just talk about it, try to make it right, try to make it one voice.
So if I read the book, or I shouldn't say when I read the book, will I be able to say, oh, this is Ginny, and this is Tara, and this is
No.
Catherine?
We don't
Nope,
think so.
We hope not. We hope that by the time we finished, first you will hear the voices of those characters, but then the authorial voice that you hear will be this Leanne Post person who we concocted.
And we weren't sure about that at first until we gave to our beta readers, and no one could tell. And so as far as we know, people see the one voice. They read the one voice. So that was the cool thing.
How did you come up with the name of your composite author?
I think it took 4 meetings.
I wanted to name the author Virginia West, but they wouldn't go along with it. I thought that would be cool, Virginia West. And then when they listed it, would say West, Virginia. Couldn't get anybody to go along with it.
So Marcella, it's our middle names. And we put them together. Lee is my middle name, Jenny's middle name, Kathy is Ann, and Karen is Post, Leanne Post. And both Jenny and I spell our middle name exactly the same way, Lee.
So there is some method that has meaning
Yes.
involved. Before I open it up to our audience to ask some questions before we round up the night, which is the more enjoyable method of writing, solo or in this group?
Well, I think there were advantages to being in the group in that we encouraged each other. We kept each other going. We kept each other on a deadline. And some of us could take on tasks that the others didn't want to take, you know, like some people don't like querying because of all the rejection involved. And others of us said, okay, we'll do it. So it worked out from that standpoint. But if you're the solo writer, of course, everything's up to you. That's not the case when you're collaborating.
I think this is more fun, which is why I'm willing to do it again. And Karen had a great idea. She said, let's write about people in a nursing home, a mystery. I already know who dies.
I know you were talking about the other day. Oh, Kathy's all ready.
I
Well,
think the hardest part here was the editing. I think it was only our long association with each other as writers that helped us keep it together during the editing, because we have it. I mean, it's not just that we have different voices and different writing styles. We have different ideas about what goes on the page and what doesn't, and how much you can leave up to the reader and how much you have to put in to help the reader get from dot to dot. So I would say, unless you're willing to stick it out through the editing phase, don't try it.
yeah,
Could you have had an outside editor, or it had to be self-edited?
oh, we had to have outside a little bit, but mostly.
Well, we had a bunch of beta readers. So many people gave us really useful feedback about the book, which we used for maybe the second edit. There's no book that gets to publishing that hasn't had at least 4 edits. So somewhere around the second edit, we used all of that beta reader feedback, which was really useful. But then after that, it was, you know, how do we deepen this character? How do we make this moment more meaningful? How do we really heighten this climax? Those are the questions we're trying to get the answers to. And we had different solutions that we had to work through. Kathy's smiling. I put that right, Kath?
You know, I think it's important to say too, and that we all writing, each character is their own POV, their own. So that was important too. I'm sorry. That each of the characters came from in their own POV.
Yeah.
So as we begin to wrap up, does anybody have any questions, or are there some questions that you weren't asked that you'd like to answer? Anything else you want the audience to know about the book and the process?
Oh, you're going to cry. That's what I want you to know. Just have tissues handy. I don't know how many times after, so we did 4 edits of our own. Then we went to a publisher. We did 4 edits with the publisher. And every damn time I cried. There was just no way around it. So just have tissues handy. Expect it to happen to you. And I think you'll survive it.
Throughout the book, or just at the end?
Throughout.
Really?
So this probably.
I think you start crying somewhere around the 3rd scene and recover, and then it happens again.
So this might not be a book that one wants to read out in public.
That's a really interesting idea. I hadn't even thought of that, but yeah, you might be uncomfortable if you sat on a bench outside to read it.
I know once I read
Not really a great beach read either.
Yeah. So I once read a book while I was getting my car repaired. And I was there for a couple of hours, and I'm sitting there. This was a book that was full of tears for me. And I'm sitting there just crying away. I mean, I can't help myself. And it was actually rather embarrassing. So this is probably not the book to take to a car repair shop to
warning on it.
No, but I will say we've had the publisher put the book on a review site, a preview site for different reviewers to take a look at it, and we've gotten really positive reviews. So it definitely is a book, you know, worth reading. Don't shy away from it because it's emotional. It's gotten a lot of we've gotten a lot of positive feedback on it.
Well, sometimes it's good to cry over something that doesn't have anything to do with your own life. So
Right.
That's really good. Yes. And there is a section in the back that we didn't initially plan to include that the publisher wanted, with references for people who might find themselves depressed or in trouble. We're uncomfortable with this because we don't want to be responsible for how people conduct themselves. But on the other hand, if someone needs help, there's a helpline listed in the back of the book.
So bringing up the publisher, are you pleased with how the publisher perhaps shaped the book beyond what you had already conceived? Or
We're being recorded.
Her shaping was mild. It's mostly where did the
Commas
go?
It's all right.
which is always a tough thing. Where do you put the commas?
Exactly. But she did let us have some semicolons, so Karen was happy.
And she was very open to our changes, and she was always asking us. And she did allow us to participate in some things I don't think we would have been able to, like the cover, and with a bigger publisher. And she right away really complimented.
She was
the
very
book,
encouraging.
and really encouraging, and was very generous with her thoughts. And they have a lot of books. Sunbury publishes, they have 4 different imprints.
5 imprints. Yeah.
5 imprints. And now they've taken on some graphic novel work. So they're very, very busy. So
Do you think your novel could be turned into a graphic novel?
Oh, no,
Not
I
that
hope
well.
not.
I don't like that idea at all.
no, that's so separate. They just have taken different genres, and this is one of them.
I think because we had been through so many revisions and we had beta readers, we actually paid an editor to read the first 3 chapters, as I recall as well. By the time it got to the publisher, it was very clean, which a manuscript has to be these days. You know, it can't be 50% there. No publisher is going to spend a lot of time fixing up a manuscript. So I think our manuscript was in pretty good shape, and most of the edits we got, I would consider copy edits. There were very few, you know, suggestions. I don't think there were any suggestions about change the character or change the pace or change the plot. It was really about commas and italics mostly.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
We were concerned about some matters, but we talked about it. We discussed it. We had Zoom meetings with her.
Mhm.
So we did talk. Kathy,
I
Did
was
you say-
waving goodbye.
are you waving goodbye? Okay.
Are there any questions from the our audience?
When is the book going to be out for, I can go to Amazon to buy this or go to Charlestown Library to pick
You
it up?
can order it on Amazon. And I don't know how Marcella works, but you might be able to get on a list at the library. But the book is actually out October 26th.
And you can pre-order it, Liz. I'm glad you came.
Yeah.
And is it possible for the library to sell copies?
I don't know. I never thought about that. We haven't asked anything like that.
It's up to the library.
Well, we can order copies at our rate and have them sell them, I guess.
Sure, if you want to. I think we can figure out how to do it.
Well, we could take on a few copies.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
That would be great.
So I'm sorry, what day again does this get
October
published?
26th.
The 26th, so a little over a month.
Yes.
Over a month. And we're doing other events too. In Winchester, we're doing a signing. In what else, guys?
Four seasons.
Four Seasons Books will have a launching, and speaking in another library.
January.
Yeah, in January. So people are welcome to come to those events, and they'll be all on our website. Oh, I was just going to say, you can pre-order the book on Barnes and Noble, Sunbury, and from our publisher. Yeah, and do it now, right now. And then they send you the book on the day, on October the 26th. And then you pay them. That's how they usually work it on Amazon.
Well,
Darla, did
wonderful.
you have your hand up for a question?
Who?
Charlotte?
Darla?
No, I didn't have a question. I just want to tell you how much I appreciated hearing about your process, and it's just wonderful. I know Tara's mentioned many times over how much she's loved working with you all, and so it's really nice to see you in person and to hear the details. It's just terrific. So thank you so much.
It is good. Charlotte was a beta reader. She read some of it and
I did.
went back and enjoyed it. Yes.
Really did. Very, very impressive. And I've ordered my copy from Amazon, so
All right.
we're just getting it in hand. Great.
I think it's going to be very successful, you guys. It's very appropriate. I think people need to know more about what's going on in the schools. I was a teacher and we had to do these lockdowns, and they were terrifying. They were truly terrifying for the kids and for the teachers. And they also didn't really take into account the kids who had had trauma in other countries. So I worked in a school where kids had been beaten by all these different kinds of radical groups from El Salvador, Somalia. It was just, and then there was all the shootings that went along with it, which started these sort of lockdowns and code reds and code blues. It was horrible. So I think just reading it, maybe you should send it to congressmen and senators. So we can
You
start.
recommend it.
Okay.
I invited Joe Manchin to tonight.
And he didn't show up.
I just sent it to his office. And it was good. I see Carrie and Catharine. Catherine Kopp just came on. Hi, everybody.
Hey.
Oh, and Sarah. So it is a big
It was
subject.
very, very interesting. I thank you guys very much.
You're welcome. Thank you,
Appreciate you
Marcella.
coming.
Yes, thank you all for coming, and we will put the recording up on our website if anybody wants to see it again.